My beautiful birthday girl, how are you?
I'm wonderful. 1 year older, feeling fucking great.
How was your birthday?
It was wonderful. I had the best time. Sugar Ray was fucking awesome.
Fuck yeah.
Loved it. Obviously, all his hits, played all his hits. Thank
Obvi.
you. Pleasing the people. He also, I didn't realize, Mark McGrath, the lead singer, hosts like a what song is this quiz show
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
So part of his act is he lets his band pick just a random song from 90s, I think early 2000s to play. And then he has to know what it is and then sing all the lyrics to it.
I mean, that's pretty fantastic.
It was amazing. I'm going to be real. I did not know the second song he played, but the first one was Pony by Genuine. And
Fuck yeah. Correct.
yes, I was like, thank you. This is kind of all I wanted for my birthday.
Yep. That's the move.
Yeah. It was amazing. I got to hang out with like all my friends from the pier. Johnny came. We went out drinking afterwards, closed down 2 bars because
Get it, girl. Yeah.
that's what you got to do. That's like part of the birthday.
Fuck yeah.
It was amazing. My mom got me 2 Lego sets I'd been eyeing for my birthday.
The plant ones?
Yeah.
Of
and I
course.
did both of them already. And then did I buy myself 2 more sets?
Fuck yeah.
Just like as a treat for me already? Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Amazing. I love everything about that.
No, it was so wonderful. The only sad part was that I did not get to see you yet for my birthday because our schedules have been crazy.
They have been. But that will be rectified soon.
Yes, because I need to see you in my life.
Yes. Obviously.
And I'm so happy to see your gorgeous face right now. She's like
literally
pin-up
same.
Bombshell gorgeous.
Thank you.
Hair done, red lips, leather jacket, like adorable little bird pin, the whole 9 yards.
Girl, I try. I have to wear so much black for work and I hate it. I'm such a colorful person. I'm not allowed to wear it for work.
You are.
So I got to take where I can get it, you know?
Well, you look amazing.
Thank
look
you.
Beautiful.
You look amazing and beautiful. You need a lot less work than I do.
Stop. Lies, blatant lies. I love you for your lies, but no, that's not true. How was your week? Any news? Any updates?
Just been very crazy. Traveling a lot. I'm currently in Cleveland visiting a friend of mine.
Fun.
He has this dog named Gordon who is, if Gordon had to take like an attachment style test, immediately it would be like anxious attachment. It would be like, you pet me 4 seconds ago and I still think that you don't love me. So I need to be on you and you need to snuggle me and love me and touch me all the time or I'm going to whine.
I kind of love it. I'm not mad about it. It's like really cute.
It's very sweet.
I would ask you what type of dog this is, but I know you don't.
I have no idea. It's a brown dog.
No dogs like that.
That's all I know. I'm sorry.
It's a brown. Oh my God. I fucking love you, dude.
He's
So
a bigger
funny.
dog.
Okay.
He's very sweet. I was trying to do some work yesterday and that was just like not possible because he was like, I need to lie on you and then put my face on your keyboard. And I was like, oh, well, that's not going to work.
Yes, I know how that goes.
Oh,
yes.
I'm very aware that you're familiar with
the
struggle.
You've seen him. Yes.
And for a little bit, my friend was like, oh, let's watch something. Like, what should we watch? And I was like, I don't know. I don't fucking watch anything. And I was like, well, what are you in the mood to watch? And he like gives me like this whole array of like, I could watch like something like really fucked up, like a true crime documentary, or I could watch something really funny,
like
or like
rom-com. And you're like,
yeah, like it's kind of like all over the map.
Here.
And he had visited me earlier in the year and we'd seen like a really ridiculous documentary. And he's like, something like that. And I was like, I got you. So I put on Chimp Crazy.
Yes. And he had not seen it?
No, he hadn't even heard of it. He was like, what the fuck am I watching? I'm like, I know.
I mean, that's the only response to it. Yes. It's insane.
And when because there's like the visual of the, you know, when you go to click it, it's Tanya, you know, in all of her glory, you know, lying down in pink, in a pink like negligee almost type of thing. And Mark was like, "Oh, is this like a comedy?" And I was like, "That's not like a real person." I'm like, "This is a documentary, baby girl." He's like, "No, it's not." I'm like, "I promise you it is. I promise
Yes.
you."
This is not a character. This is a real person.
Yes. So he's already hooked. He's already spoken to so many people about it, being like, "Have you fucking seen Chip Crazy?"
I love that so, so much.
Which, incidentally, if you guys are not on our Patreon, you should subscribe, because we are doing episode by episode coverage of Chip Crazy and their video episodes, and you get to see our reactions because they are aplenty. My God.
They're also necessary for this documentary because
100%.
sometimes I'm just stunned into silence, but my face says everything and more.
100%.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it at the moment.
I love it. I did get to see 28 Years Later. That was one of my like birthday things.
And?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
It's really hard to top the first one.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like none of the original characters, obviously. It's kind of its own separate
Even
story.
Killian's not in it?
No.
No, girl. What are we doing here then?
I know. Thank you. Thank you. When I got out, I was like, am I being ridiculous that I like expected him to be, even if he like wasn't alive, like there to be some reference of him in some way?
Yeah.
No, they set it up for another movie after it, though, which apparently I looked up and is going to be called 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple.
Oh my. That sounds metal as fuck.
It does sound metal as fuck. Yes. It also sounds like some shit from Indiana Jones.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, I enjoyed it. There was a lot of full frontal male nudity.
Oh my.
From the infected, the quote-unquote zombies that are not
okay.
really zombies. Oh, yeah. Apparently this is like a big thing online.
So like infected peen?
A lot of infected peen. A lot of
Girl.
big infected peen.
Oh. Go on.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah. There's like a new development where there's quote-unquote alphas of the infected, which are just like really big, really fast, slightly more intelligent,
like a more evolved.
Yeah, kind of. And apparently they got some big swinging dick, girl. I don't know.
Big old donkey dick. Well, in the What Went Wrong episode, they did mention that there was an idea to have, I don't remember if it's to have them naked, but to have the zombies have like massive erections.
Yes. So fucking funny.
Yeah.
Which I was like, that's honestly like the most terrifying zombie situation you can imagine. Like I thought it was already terrifying. I don't want to run for my life from something.
And then be like, are you gonna rape me?
It's like, has a huge hard on. No.
No, thank you. Interesting.
Yes. There were a lot of interesting things. I don't want to spoil anything, but one of my favorite actresses is in it. Jodie Comer, I think is how you say her last name. She played Eve in Killing Eve. Phenomenal. She was phenomenal.
I'm pretty sure she was on Broadway like 2 seasons ago and did like a one-woman show.
Okay.
I believe it was her, where she played a lawyer who got sexually assaulted and then had to, in addition to like reliving it, had to litigate.
Stop.
Like how she could prove it.
That sounds so good. Okay.
I heard it was very good. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is her.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
But I was also like, as a woman, sorry, I don't need to sit in a theater for 2 hours to have it explained to me how the law is designed to not believe women when they've been sexually assaulted.
Yeah. You're like, I'm aware. Thank you.
I've lived my life. I'm good. I got it. Nailed it.
Yeah. Message received.
Yeah. So, and everyone said it was amazing, but I was like, I don't think I can do this to myself.
I'm not in the mood for this.
Yeah.
I totally feel that. But yeah, I enjoyed it, but that might just be because I'm, a huge 28 Days Later fan. So anything like in that world, I'm kind of about.
Mm-hmm.
But like most zombie movies, if you want to consider this a zombie movie.
Right, because there's such a like point of contention about that apparently.
I know, and I always like qualify it. They actually, I think, call them zombies at one point in this, because I had a moment where I was like, oh my god, they're saying it officially, because they don't usually.
I feel like I need to give 28 Days Later another chance because I've only seen it once and I fucking hated it.
So funny. We rewatched it before we went to see this one, and I still really enjoyed it.
I was in college and in my 20s and a terrible person. So I, think that probably had a lot to do with it. I just like hated it. Like as soon as they're infected with rage, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I hate this. Why are you telling me? I don't care.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I feel like I enjoyed it more after listening to the What Went Wrong episode on it.
I mean, that's usually the case.
Yeah.
That's usually why I love a deep dive.
Yes. And then I like turned into like the commentator of the movie as we were watching it. And I was like giving all these little facts that I had learned from the What Went Wrong episode. I was like, oh, by the way.
It's like actually not possible for me to love you more. I mean, I do in every possible way. And then you just are like, by the way, here's another reason.
No, I love you so much.
I love you.
Yes, we're very similar in this way. I will say, my last note, my favorite thing from the What Went Wrong episode was that the director, Danny Boyle, like saw Killian without his shirt on.
Oh,
and like was obsessed and literally just like kept adding scenes where he would like need to be like naked or shirtless. And I was just like, one, I love you, Danny. Thank you. Correct.
The world thanks you.
But I just like thought it was so funny that he was like obsessed and was like, yeah, no, we need to get your shirt off for this one.
Same. And like, what's so funny to me is that, especially in the last like 10, 20 years, God, I'm such an old, it's become so popular to be like super jacked, like the whole like Marvel, like aesthetic, superhero aesthetic, which I don't personally care for.
Same.
So it was like so funny to me because Cillian Murphy's not jacked.
No, he's like lean.
Yes, he's lean. He's like tone.
Yeah, but he's not like buff.
Right. Like he definitely has muscles, but it's like,
yes,
like
but you're right. Person. It's like a, very lean toned look.
Yeah. So to hear that Danny Boyle was like, this dude looks amazing with his fucking shirt off. Like, we need to have, like, can he just be naked for the entire fucking movie? Please and thank you. Like oh my God. It's like he's never seen someone like that. But yes, I also enjoyed that piece of information.
So funny. Yeah, and relatable. I was like, yeah, I get it. Which like might be the reason I loved that movie so much too, was I was just like, I am into Cillian Murphy and like he's kind of undressed through a lot of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. Again, never going to top the first one, but if you want to check it out, check it out.
Nice.
And I saw it at Alamo, obviously, because I love them.
Yeah, we don't make that mistake again.
No. On that note, are you ready to regale me with a creepy, spooky paranormal story?
Yes. And all I'm going to say is I don't really know what to make of this.
Oh.
So buckle up. There's lots of twists and turns because however you think this is going to go, it's not. Promise you. So, sources: paranormalcatalog.net, mercuriouspoliticus.wordpress.com, collection.sciencemuseumgroup.org.uk, Reddit, Wikipedia, historicmysteries.com, eleanormorton.substack.com, tomruffles.wordpress.com, history.howstuffworks.com, and the Generation Y podcast, which is wonderful, incidentally. Never heard it. It's great.
I feel like I've seen it get recommended to me, but I, again, have not checked it out either.
Same. But they actually did 2 episodes on this story, like just a regular episode. And apparently people were like, I'm sorry, what the fuck? And then the host was like, okay, we're going to do like a deep dive episode into like the whole thing. That was like 3 times the length of the first one.
Love it. And you're like relatable also.
Girl, yes.
Yeah.
So let's jump in. Our story takes place in the small town of Dodleston, England, near the English-Welsh border. And no, there's no Welsh things here, I don't think.
Oh, thank God. I was like, did you do this to yourself again? Why?
Yes, no. It's like on the English side. It's not on the Welsh side. As per the latest census done in 2011, the picturesque village boasts a population of 715 people. And like many places in Europe, Dodleston is old as fuck. If the castle ruins peppered throughout the area don't give you a sense of antiquity, Dodleston was actually recorded as a settlement in the Domesday Book of 1086.
Damn.
Yeah, and for those who don't remember, the Domesday Book is a medieval manuscript that contains the results of a massive land survey of England conducted by William the Conqueror in 1086. The goal of the comprehensive survey was to assess the wealth of the kingdom and determine how much tax the king could collect and what military aid he could expect from his subjects. And it was given the name of the Doomsday Book because, like God's final judgment in Christianity, the recordings of this land survey were seen as, quote, definitive and unappealable, end quote. I will never get over the hilarity of that fact.
Amazing.
So, Dodleston has a bunch of these cottages that are literally hundreds of years old. And in 1984, an economics teacher at the local high school named Ken Webster moved into an 18th century brickstone house named Meadow Cottage with his girlfriend Debbie. Their friend Nicola, or Nick as she's usually referred to, was also staying with the couple. However, it seems like she was more crashing with them for an extended period of time rather than straight up being Ken and Debbie's roommate. And from what I could gather, Nick was a struggling actor. She thought that the way to break into the industry and get her equity card, which is membership to the Theatrical Performance Union, for those who do not know, was to write and perform her own comedy sketches. And to help her out, Ken borrowed a BBC microcomputer from the school he worked at and brought it home to the cottage. The BBC microcomputer was created and introduced as part of the BBC's Computer Literacy Project. Because it was designed to help familiarize children with computers, it was heavily used in schools and came installed with a very basic word processing program called Edward, but spelled W-O-R-D instead of, which I love.
Stop.
Love.
Am I obsessed? Yes.
High key. Obsessed.
Love a pun. Thank you.
Girl. The cottage itself was pretty run down, so the trio begrudgingly went about renovating it. And almost immediately, weird shit started happening. One day, Ken noticed what appeared to be small, six-toed footprints that seemed to walk up the wall of the old cottage and through the ceiling. And Ken was like, it's an old house, it's probably just stains. But when scrubbing the prints off proved ineffective, Ken just grabbed a bucket of paint, painted over them, and went about his day. But the next day, the footprints appeared again in the same place on top of the new paint. And things just got progressively stranger from there. Ken, Nick, and Debbie would regularly find bottles, boxes, and cans of cat food stacked on top of each other in a pyramid, sometimes stacked as high as over 4 feet tall.
What?
Right.
Leave the cat food alone.
Yeah, absolutely. But they're like, okay, this is weird, but they just figured that one of their friends had been playing a prank on them, but no one ever fessed up to it. Over the next few days, the activity in the centuries-old cottage escalated. The 3 roommates reported experiencing sudden gusts of cold wind, strong enough to lift up newspaper, visions of shadows moving about the home, as well as the distinct, unsettling feeling that they weren't alone and that there was some unseen entity haunting their house. One evening, the trio went out to the local pub for some drinks. After a few hours out, the 3 left the bar and walked home together. But as they approached their cottage, they saw a pulsing green light coming from the windows of their home. When they got inside, they saw the flashing light was coming from their computer, and there was a strange message waiting for them on the screen. It read, quote, "True are the nightmares of a person that fears. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. Turn, pretty flower, turn towards the sun, for you shall grow and sow. But the flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light. Get out your bricks. Pussycat, Pussycat went to London to seek fame and fortune. Faith must not be lost, for this shall be your redeemer," end quote. And Ken was like, okay, weird, but obviously a prank. But how could there be a message on their computer? It wasn't connected to any network, and everyone in the house had been gone all night. So Ken figured whoever wrote the message must have pre-written it and stored it on their computer, because I guess people are just pranking it up in Dodleston. But they were like, weird, but okay, whatever. Then a few days later, Ken, Debbie, and Nick returned home from a day trip and found that a new file had been saved on their computer. The file was named REATE, Reate. When they opened it, it contained the following message. Quote, "What strange words thou speak, although I must confess that I have also been ill-schooled. Thou art goodly man who have fanciful women who dwell in mine home. Is a fitting place with lights which devil maketh, and costly things that only mine friend Edmund Gray can afford, or the king himself. It was a great crime to have bribed mine house." And it was signed LW.
What the fuck?
Girl. Ken printed out the message and brought it to school, hoping to find some sort of explanation, or that someone would finally own up to what he believed was just a series of pranks. And most people he showed the message to either thought that it was funny or just plain nonsense. But when Ken showed it to Peter Trinder, the literature professor, Peter was interested, because not only did the message sound like the author could see Ken and Debbie, the literature professor believed that the messages had been written in Old English, and he'd interpreted the phrase, quote, "devil lights," to mean their computer.
What?
Girl.
Weird.
Fascinated, Trinder asked Ken to let him know if any more messages appeared, and if so, to print them out and bring them to him so that he could try to narrow down the location and time period of the dialect. A few days passed, but there were no new messages. Then Ken was like, wait a minute. If I'm getting messages, maybe I can also send whoever it is a message that's sending me messages through the computer.
Stop.
At this point, Ken thought that there was a decent possibility that this was a hoax, but he admitted that he was intrigued. So he was like, fuck it, and typed out the following message. Quote, "Dear LW, thank you for your message. We're sorry for disturbing you. What would you like us to do? Did you live on a house on this land about 1620? Do you want us to tell you more about our time? Who is Edmund Gray? Do you have a family? Is the King James or Charles? What is the charge house? Was the village called Dodleston in your life? Thank you very much for your messages. Thank you for not making us afraid. Ken, Debbie, and Nick." End quote. Ken saved the messages to a disk, left the computer on, and went to the pub with the hopes that by the time he returned home, there would be a new message waiting for him. And he was right. The new message read, quote, "It was an honest farm of oak and stone. It is helpful that you should tell me about thy time. Dost thou hath horse? Edmund Gray, brother of John Gray, lives at Kinderton Hall. Thy king, of course, is Henry the Eighth, who is 46. I know not of King James. Mine charge house is a place of law and schooling. LW, 28, March, anno 1521. End quote.
Shut the fuck up.
Girl.
I'm sorry. Is this like a fucking time travel computer? Like, what is going on?
I don't know. And it's just gonna get fucking weirder as we go on. Like, there's so much more shit in this that I was like, I have to cut a bunch of this out just because we're gonna be here for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And we have shit to do. We have fucking Cillian Murphy's shirtless body to go look at and gawk at.
Yes. So funny.
So whoever LW is claiming that they're writing Ken from the year 1521. But the thing is, the historical facts in LW's responses are wrong. In 1521, Henry VIII was only 30 years old, not 46. Kinderton Hall wasn't built until the early 1700s. and there was no record or mention of any Edmund or John Gray living there. All things Peter Trinder confirmed upon his analysis of this latest message. Not only that, Ken found LW's use of modern grammar and punctuation throughout the message rather sus, as they wouldn't have been used in the 16th century, leaving Ken to believe that they might have an intruder who had been breaking into their home when they were away to rearrange their cat food tins and leave them messages claiming to be from the 1520s.
Which, like, why? That's so fucking
Exactly.
random.
It's random. It's weird. I know people are bored, don't have shit to do, but like it's a little too weird.
Yeah.
Not knowing what to do, Ken, Debbie, and Nick just decided to wait it out and see if any more messages would appear. And they did. For months. In the next message, LW shared a bunch of information about his life. He talked about losing his wife and son to the plague, and about harvesting barley for ale, and that he makes his own cheese. He described his home, Meadow Cottage, as humble, made of red stone, and sitting on a pretty parcel of land. But the home where Ken, Nick, and Debbie were living in was not made of red stone. However, they were doing renovations on the house. And when they dug up some of the land in the garden, they looked under the kitchen and they discovered the foundation of a much older structure that was made of red sandstone. The messages continued, but the latest series of communications had a distinctly different tone, as LW seemed to think that it was Ken who was intruding on his house and had even voiced his own concerns about their conversations. LW eventually signed one of the messages with his full name, Lucas Wayman. Ken now had a name to go along with a bevy of personal details that Lucas had shared in their communications. So he gave this new info to Peter Trinder to see if they could cross-reference it. Regarding the writing of the message itself, Trinder believed that the dialect sentence structure and intermittent use of Latin placed the messages in the middle of the 16th century in the Cheshire area, which is exactly where and when Lucas Wayman said that he was living and communicating from. As the messages progressed, the historical facts therein became more consistent and accurate. Lucas wrote that King Henry VIII is married to Catherine Parr, which would put him in the 1540s, which was consistent with other details he had provided. However, certain names Lucas mentioned, like Richard Wishel, couldn't be found. Now, if this was a hoax, it's safe to assume that the perpetrator would fill his messages with names and details that could be easily fact-checked, thus adding credence to his claim that he's communicating from the 1500s. However, as per the information Ken was given, Lucas was a simple rural farmer. He'd really only have knowledge of the king and the people in his village, and a tiny hamlet like Dodleston wouldn't have kept detailed records of every individual living there at the time. But as the two continued their electronic correspondence, Ken started to believe that this was legit. The responses were coming in entirely too quickly for it to be someone breaking into their house and leaving files on the computer. And Ken and Debbie really started to believe that they were somehow communicating with a real man who lived 400 years ago on the same piece of land where the three of them were currently living in 1985. Speaking of 1985, Ken hadn't told Lucas that he was from the future. But when he eventually revealed that to his 16th century pen pal, this is where shit gets extra wild.
This is already wild. What the
Girl,
fuck?
Girl. This story could have been like 8 hours long. Like, it's insane. Because after Ken sent Lucas a message about living in the year 1985, he received the following reply, quote, "You said your time be 1985? We thought you were also from 2109, like your friend." End quote.
Chills. What friend?
Girl! So apparently, this BBC microcomputer could not only communicate with the past, but with the future. And Ken was like, I'm sorry, fucking what? Who the fuck are the people from 2109?
And can you hook me up with them? I want to talk to them. I have some questions about some stocks that should be invested in.
Girl.
Cool.
So he asked Lucas, but Lucas said that he didn't know and that he thought that they were friends of Ken's. So Ken figured the only way to find out was to ask. So he typed out, quote, calling 2109, end quote, and saved it to the computer. And 2109 responded.
Is this a Black Mirror episode? Like, what is going on?
Maybe.
I love this so much already. I'm obsessed.
I know. I found this story like a month ago, and I was like, I'm going to save this for Amy's birthday.
Because I think
she'd really like it.
You know me so well.
There is so much happening in this. And I was like, I think it checks like all of Amy's boxes. So I'm gonna save this.
My box overfloweth. Yes.
I fucking love you. I love you. I can't handle it.
I love you. The story is amazing. Okay. What the fuck is going on?
So 2109 responded, writing, quote, Ken, Deb, Peter, we are sorry that we can only give you two choices. One, that you either have your predicament explained in such a way that you have instant understanding, but cause what should not happen, or two, try to understand that you three have a purpose that shall, in your lifetime, changes the face of history. We, 2109, must not affect your thoughts directly, but give you some sort of guidance that will allow room for your own destiny. All we can say is that we are all part of the same God, whatever he or whatever it is. End quote. So while all of this is going on, the poltergeist activity at Meadow Cottage was ramping up. Various objects continued to be found stacked in the corners of rooms. The sounds of tapping and footsteps were heard at all hours of the night. But whenever one of the roommates would go to investigate, the only thing they would find would be the footprints left behind. Sections of the house would become so cold that you could see your own breath, and several words, including Lucas's name, were found written in chalk throughout the house. And all of the strange and unexplainable activity started to take a toll on the rest of the residents of the house. Nick, who had lived at the cottage since all this crazy shit started, straight up just moved out. Deb, on the other hand, rented another house nearby so they could occasionally get some sleep. While Deb seemed annoyed and likely fucking exhausted because homegirl has not gotten any sleep because of all this fucking racket going on at all hours of the fucking night, she wanted to try and find some explanation as to what the fuck was going on. And she discovered that their cottage sat right on top of a ley line.
Yes, yes, yes.
And allegedly after that, Deb started having visions and vivid dreams about Lucas, where she would even interact with him like he was trying to further communicate with her. So at this point, Ken and Deb are like, all right, this is a fucking lot. We need to get a professional in here to help us deal with this. And while they didn't get a priest party going, they did contact the Society for Psychical Research, who sent over two investigators, David Welch and John Bucknell, to investigate what the fuck was going on at Meadow Cottage. So Welch and Bucknell proposed a test. They would send 2109 10 questions and then delete them. The paranormal investigators wouldn't tell Ken and Debbie what the questions were, and Ken and Debbie were kept away from the computer while they waited for a reply. A few days later, 2109 responded. They wrote, quote, David, John David, you interfere with communication. Next time you decide to perform your little experiment, you must be clear. From here, we suggest you try someone else to sit with Debbie. Yes, we are what you would call attacking universe, but your understanding is incorrect. We ask nothing more of you than to carry on as you would prefer. We will have John present if given choice, and you may bring another. As mentioned, no, it is no concern to us that this is not proved. We will give you a plotting of a star next time. We move at a speed so that we cover every point in your time and universe. We have no form. We feed off a heat energy that you will not have heard of. 2109, end quote.
My brain is exploding. What? What?
Girl.
I'm obsessed, for the record. I need it to be stated.
I am so glad you are. So Welch said that 2109 didn't answer the questions that they had asked, but had referenced all the questions in the correct order. And Ken and Debbie were like, you see, this is real. Like, what the fuck? But the SPR investigators called bullshit, believing that perhaps sensitive microphones could have been planted to let them know the questions in advance, or that maybe a microphone could pick up the sounds of the keys being pressed, and that Ken would have been able to figure out what the investigators had typed by just listening to the sounds of the keystrokes. So I'm going to call bullshit on this bullshit. So most articles mention that Ken dabbled with music on the side. And while I don't find this to be explicitly stated, I guess they're saying that you're a musician, you have microphones, so you had the capacity to hear, record, and deduce what keys were being hit to the point that you would be able to figure out the questions that were being typed out to 2109. Okay, so I looked it up, and in 1985, a BBC Micro Model B computer cost around £399. Adjusted for inflation and currency, that's about 1,600 in today's American currency. So I think it's safe to assume that Ken was borrowing a computer because he couldn't afford to buy one. Just like how he was living in a dilapidated cottage with two other people, mind you. It's probably not because they were rolling in cash. And while I couldn't find a concrete number, in 1985, professional microphones cost thousands of dollars in 1985 money. And I just don't believe that he had that kind of equipment, even if he had nothing else to do with his time and desperately wanted to defraud the Society for Psychical Research. Either way, the SPR thinks that this is bullshit. So Ken looked for more ways to convince them that what was happening at Meadow Cottage was real. So Ken enlisted the help of Frank Davis, another teacher at the school, and Frank agreed to come over and serve as a witness. When Frank arrived at the study where the computer was set up, he noted that the room became extremely cold for 2 or 3 minutes before returning to normal. They went back to the kitchen for a while to talk, and when they came back to check the computer, a new message had arrived. But this time, it wasn't from Lucas or 2109. It was from someone else. The author of the message identified himself as John and said he was a friend of Lucas. John wrote that the local sheriff had Lucas imprisoned for witchcraft and communicating with spirits. And for a few days, the messages stopped, and Ken and Debbie were like, well, that tracks because Lucas was locked up in the clink somewhere.
Yeah. Abe.
Meanwhile, Peter Trinder was still hard at work trying to get as much information as he could about the multiple months' worths of messages. In several of them, Lucas claimed to have attended Brasenose College, one of the constituent colleges of the University of Oxford, and gave Ken a list of books to prove that he was telling the truth. So with the help of a librarian from the prestigious college, Trinder confirmed that not only did every single book that Lucas mentioned exist at the college, but that they were all contemporary to the 1520s. Again, the time period Lucas claims to have been communicating from. So Ken and Debbie are like, okay, we got to get Lucas out of jail. And apparently spoke with the sheriff who had imprisoned him through the computer and demanded that Lucas be released or else they would use their power against him. And the sheriff was like, girl, you don't got to tell me twice, and immediately freed Lucas.
What the actual fuck?
Girl, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what to make of the story. It's fucking nuts. The messages between the two started up again, and so did the poltergeist activity. Ken asked Lucas if he was the one who had been moving the objects around in his house. But not only did Lucas say it wasn't him, but that the same thing had been happening to him on his side. And both Ken and Lucas came to believe that 2109 was the one responsible for the paranormal activity. And the two started to grow suspicious of the mysterious entity from the future, as 2109 had allegedly warned both men not to give each other details about their lives. So Lucas asked Ken to move the computer into the kitchen so that the two men could communicate more privately. Why that would make a difference, I don't have any idea, but he did as he was told. And then Lucas asked Ken to leave a pen and paper next to the computer. The economics teacher thought it was an odd request, but this whole situation was batshit insane, so fuck it, he did what he was asked. The following morning, on the paper next to the computer was a handwritten note. The writing was elegant and archaic, and the note was signed Thomas. Lucas confided that his real name was actually Thomas, but that he was reluctant to give it for fear of being accused of witchcraft, which, spoiler, he was. But in the handwritten letter, Thomas left clues about his full name, writing, quote, "You have my name in your book. It is also the name of Peter's house," end quote. Peter lived close by in the town of Howarden, which was also where the high school Ken and Peter taught at was. Using this information, Ken and Peter were able to track down a man named Thomas Howarden, who was one of the original 12 founding fellows at Brasenose College at Oxford in the 1530s. It seemed like Ken, Debbie, and Peter were finally starting to crack this mysterious riddle, but apparently 2109 was not fucking here for it. A few days later, the computer was found in the bathroom, having apparently moved on its own, and Ken found a stern warning scribbled in chalk on the floor. Quote, "One more chance. Measure frequency by +2 energy. What else other than sound and light? Ken, Deb, Peter. We have reason to believe you have Lucas Wayman's true name. If this is correct, you must say so we can rectify the problem immediately before it's accepted," end quote. After more correspondence with Thomas Howarden, Ken learned that 2109 had allegedly been tampering with the earlier messages sent by the 16th century farmer in an effort to prevent Ken from discovering Thomas's true identity, which is why some historical facts were wrong in those initial messages. Meanwhile, the Society for Psychical Research had not only lost interest in the case, but they believed that it was a full-on hoax perpetrated by Ken and Peter, with a possibility of help from a third party. They told a local newspaper, quote, "I would have loved to prove it was genuine. It would have been the most unique phenomenon ever recorded. Something or someone is doing it. It was not the job of the SPR to point the finger," end quote. And Ken was like, "Fuck you, this is bullshit," and he reached out to the SPR to get their files on his case. And again, this is where things somehow get weirder. Allegedly, the SPR told Ken that they didn't know what the fuck he was talking about, as there was no record of his case. Investigator John Bucknell had disappeared, and there was no record of anyone named David Welch affiliated with the Society for Psychical Research. On their end, there was no trace of anyone connected to Ken's case. So, as far as the SPR was concerned, none of this had ever happened.
My jaw is on the floor. What?
What is happening? I don't know. I don't know, girl.
Weird. This is so weird.
Yes. A few days later, there was another message waiting for Ken. This time, it was from 2109. And unlike their previous messages, which were always pretty cryptic, this one was direct and specific. It read, quote, "We ask you to do the following. There is a brilliant researcher ufologist. We know you don't like the word. His name is Gary M. Rowe. His ideas differ somewhat from yours, but nevertheless, he can help you with a couple of your problems. You may phone him at the number below and invite him to talk with you. When he comes, show him this and ask him what he makes of it. Peter must do the telephoning. Tell him that you got this phone number from a UFO enthusiast. 2109, end quote. So they hit Gary up and he's like, "This is fucking weird, but I'm guessing what else is he really doing? Like how much is going on in the ufology situation at this point?"
This would be the highlight of my day. Are you kidding me? If somebody sent me this situation and was like, hey, can you help out with this? I'd be like, I'm
Yeah.
there. I am in
Cancel
my
my fucking
car.
plans.
Yes, I'm on my way.
I'm bringing Boo. Let's go. So he showed up at Meadow Cottage with his equipment and began his investigation. And he started communicating with 2109 directly. But to ensure that no one in the house was the one behind these mysterious messages, Gary would put a letter in a sealed envelope and place it on top of the computer. When 2109 would respond, the message would be printed and then put in an envelope without Ken reading it. This method of correspondence between the two went on for some time. And apparently, 2109 shared something with Gary in one of the messages that caused him to become very secretive about its contents. Whatever was written in the messages, they were significant enough that he believed them. Writing the future entity, quote, "Greetings. I'm instructed to apologize, but in any event, I would have done so on my own volition. There will be a letter, hopefully this weekend. I'm also instructed to apologize to Ken and Debbie. I must try and answer your last letter. It would appear that you are more important than I had realized in the scheme of things. Gary," end quote. So, even though Gary was there to research this phenomena, he wouldn't share any of the information or messages with Ken. So Ken's like, I'm sorry, if you're like not gonna fucking help me, then you can like fuck all the way off. So Gary stormed out, and Ken and Debbie never heard from the UFO researcher again. Ken continued his electronic correspondence with Thomas/Lucas, and Thomas explained that one night he saw glowing lights coming from his fireplace, and that a man stepped out from the light and asked him to not be afraid. And that when the man left, Lucas found what he described as a box of light in his kitchen. And when he spoke to the light box, his words would appear on a screen in glowing green letters. On March 21st, 1985, Thomas sent his final message. Quote, "My true fellows and sweet maid, Rosner said that Thomas must go. I know it is for the best because the people of Dodleston are very wary of me. It is good to know that all will change and there are true men to follow like Ken and Peter. Though 400 years is a long time and there's much to happen to mankind, perhaps you will come to Oxford. Now I think there is no danger for me there, for I hear the king is very sick and all is quiet in the church. I shall go by boat from Cheshire to Bristol. I shall try to make my stay at Brasenose. I will write my book about my brothers and maid, and the end of Lucas and our love for one another. One day you will all sit down at my table for wine and mead by the river in Oxford, where we shall read each other's books and laugh, and we shall speak of truth and good men, watching Oxford change together forevermore. In your time, my book is old, but I shall not go to my God until it is written. Then we will be truly embraced. My love to you all. I shall await you in Oxford. Thomas Howerton." End quote. Then 2109 also sent their final message, writing, quote, "There is another person to come. They will be the help we need. You will know when they come." Thomas did eventually write his book, and he soon died shortly after. He placed it in a secure place. It shouldn't take too many years to find it. Though he wrote it in Latin with the help of a friend that he met in Oxford, the inscription reads, "He writes this with the hope that mine friends will one day find this book. Then may our lands be not so distant." We will finish now. You have a lot of work to do. There's no need to write back, as we will have gone. Thank you for your cooperation. 2109. End quote. When all was said and done, Lucas and 2109 had sent over 300 messages to Ken and Debbie over the course of 18 months.
Holy fuck, dude.
Yep. In 1989, Ken Webster published The Vertical Plane, in which he documented his supernatural experiences at Meadow Cottage over that year and a half. In 1996, Ken and Debbie appeared in the 1996 BBC documentary From Out of This World, with their backs to the camera, and insisted that their experiences were real and that they held important information about our past and future, and that one day it was going to come to light that everything that they said was true. Peter Trinder maintained that the Dodleston messages were the real deal, telling the BBC program that the original script of the messages were so foreign sounding that he had to dig through years of the Oxford English Dictionary to figure out what a lot of the words in the messages even meant, asserting that it would have almost been impossible to fake, especially for someone with no background in medieval languages. However, Dr. Laura Wright of Cambridge also appeared on that same show and called bullshit on their authenticity, saying the verb structure used in the messages would not have been used in 1546. When asked if she thought the hoax was perpetrated by someone with a background in early English writing, interestingly, Dr. Wright said no, asserting that if someone had a background in modern English writings, they would have done a better job at faking the messages. Not only that, apparently Dr. Wright did a comprehensive analysis using samples of Ken and Lucas's writing and found an almost identical frequency of incidences of adjectives in front of nouns between both Lucas's writings and Webster's descriptive passages, suggesting that both were composed by the same author. Ken, however, claimed that the writing sample they used was only 300 words and therefore not large enough of a sample to be accurately tested and analyzed, asserting that the BBC went out of their way to choose passages they were certain would give them the results they wanted. Maybe the Dodleston messages were one big, long, elaborate hoax, but for what purpose? Other than writing the book, neither Debbie nor Ken ever profited off of the experience. Even after the BBC program aired, which again, they didn't even show their face in, they didn't go out looking for more publicity to capitalize on the story. And it's not like the two of them are hitting it up at every UFO or high strangeness convention, telling their story to anyone willing to listen. While Debbie can be found online, Ken is harder to track down, as he prefers his privacy. In fact, in February of 2022, Ken Webster released a second edition of The Vertical Plane that included new thoughts and information, as well as a new foreword in which Ken indicated that it's the last time that he will ever speak about the Dodleston messages, writing, quote, "Now, just over 10 years after our own adventures, the sad but good advice seems to be to keep quiet about it. Meadow Cottage was important to us. It is sufficient." End quote. In one of the comments for the Generation Y episode YouTube channel, a woman who claimed to have dated Debbie's ex-boyfriend wrote, quote, "I used to date Debbie's ex-boyfriend. He knows both Debbie and Ken very well and has firsthand knowledge of the situation. Whilst I can't prove this story to be true, I do know that they all genuinely believe it. I have no reason to doubt any of them." End quote. So one of the biggest things that people point to as proof that the Dodleston messages are a hoax are the historical inaccuracies found in the first several messages from Thomas/Lucas. The age that he listed the king being was wrong, and his manner of word and speech was wrong for the time and place he supposedly lived during. But, especially since it has come up recently on our show, what if Thomas didn't exist in our timeline as we know it to be, but was actually communicating from an alternate timeline or reality? Because even though there were inaccuracies, Ken was also given information about the future that turned out to be right. In Ken's book, The Vertical Plane, which again was published in 1989, he says that 2109 told Ken that Fermat's last theorem would be solved within Ken's lifetime. Pierre de Fermat proposed a mathematical theorem in 1637, and it was studied by mathematicians for over 350 years and couldn't be solved until 1995, when Andrew Wiles published the first successful proof of Fermat's last theorem, earning Wiles a Nobel Prize. Not only that, 2109 also gave the coordinates of an undiscovered star that they said would be important to mankind. Years later, a quasar was found at those exact coordinates.
What the fuck?
For his part, UFO investigator Gary Rowe wholeheartedly believes that he was chosen by 2109 for a higher purpose. But for 40 years, Gary has never told anyone what that is, and he too never made any attempt to profit from it. The only time Gary ever really talks about Dodleston or 2109 is when other people bring it up. He said, quote, "Many people are highly skeptical about the events related in the Vertical Plane book, quite rightly so, given the degree of strangeness. But I am not. I left no stone unturned and used cutting-edge science to get to the truth. In fact, I believe it was the first computer-controlled psychic investigation recorded in the world. I know it really happened. It changed my life forever. It is going to change yours. The book will one day be ISBN recorded under the history section. It is a monumental historical marker in the ribbon of time." End quote. It seems like the answers to everything might lie in Thomas's book, the one that both he and 2109 said that he had written about his version of events and left somewhere where it could be found in the future so that Ken and Debbie would know that he was telling the truth. Despite there being rumors that the book was given to the Queen of England or resides in the Dean of Brasennose's private collection, as far as we know, Thomas's book has never been found. And that is the strange story of the Dodleston messages.
I'm speechless.
What the fuck?
I loved that so much. I'm obsessed.
I'm so glad.
I want to flip this desk over, but not in anger, like in excitement. I can't handle it for 1 second.
Yeah. And like, because a lot of people are like, it's a hoax or, but
this is so elaborate though.
It's
and
so
like
elaborate.
For what?
And something that has been posited is because 2109 said that like they are not a physical form, but that they work at like the speed of like light, but they like feed off of heat. That it was like, what if this is a quantum computer?
I love that theory. Yeah.
It's very strange and bizarre and
mysterious.
It's mysterious. What? I don't know what to make of it. And then just like the strange, like it's a weird prediction to be like, this obscure theorem is going to be solved in your lifetime. Like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
And it wasn't only solved, but the guy who solved it won a fucking Nobel Prize, like, for doing it.
And like, how many people just like know about obscure theorems? Like,
I fucking didn't. I know Pythagoras. That's it.
The People's Theorem. Yes.
I fucking love you.
Yes. Oh my God. I love you. I love that story so much. I obviously never heard of it. My brain is buffering.
Yeah.
Because like, I just, what?
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, I don't know what to make of this.
I mean, make a movie out of this is what I'm voting
please
for.
And thank you.
Yeah. This is so fucking crazy.
And just how like there's like paranormal activity happening. There's like time happening.
That was the other thing too. Of like, if this was all a hoax, like why wouldn't it just be the computer stuff? Why were there poltergeist shit happening as well?
Yeah, like, and then if it is a hoax, then why wouldn't you like if you've ever done like a past life thing, you're always Cleopatra, you're always like some known entity.
Yeah, why would you?
You're never like
person.
You're never Jim, who born and died in the same fucking town and shoveled cow shit and died when he was 36. That's never who you are in one of these like past life things. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's what it would have been if it was a hoax.
100%.
But I don't understand what it is to not be a hoax. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck is this?
Also, again, this is just so much work for a hoax. Like
a year and a half, 300 messages.
Yeah. Do people really have this like time and level of commitment to things? Like, I don't know.
Girl, I don't.
I mean, same. This is wild. I loved it so much, though. This is definitely going to be like top of mind this week.
I'm so glad.
What the fuck?
First of your birthday gifts.
I love it. Thank you. You know me so well. You know what I like.
I know. I love you. Happy birthday.
I love you. Thank you so much. That was so fucking good. I really just like, I'm beaming and I just like don't know what to think. Yeah.
Fucking UFO. And it's like, why are they asking for the UFO guy? Like,
Yeah.
I don't, because 2109 asked for him specifically and was like, by the way, here's his number. And like, hit him up to come here.
Yeah, this is all very weird.
Like, I don't think it's a hoax because, again, like, this is a lot of time and effort and for a year and a half to do this. But I don't understand what it means for it to not be a hoax.
Same. I'm so intrigued, though. I love this.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Just when I thought I'd heard it all, Monique.
Same.
You come out with some wild ass shit. I love it.
I got you, baby.
This is why we're best friends.
Absolutely.
All right. Are you ready to get into some true crime?
I'm so fucking ready. I'm so fucking ready.
Yes. Okay. I went fairly light on the trauma today. So,
love you. Amazing.
Yes. As a partial birthday present to myself.
I
And all of you.
it.
Yeah. I was like, I can't. No, I don't want to traumatize myself right before my birthday. I'm good. Okay. Let's get into it. Sources: CBS News, NBC News, The Seattle Times, King5.com, which is Seattle's local NBC affiliate, The Oregonian, DailyMail.com, People.com, ScreenRant.com, courts.w.gov, and findagrave.com. Theodore Mark Stover, who went by his middle name, was born in Seattle, Washington on March 18, 1952. His father passed away when he was just 18 months old, leaving his mother to raise him and his siblings alone. Tragedy struck the family again when one of his sisters died as well, although
Fuck.
there are no details on this. Yes. According to his other sister, Vicky, it wasn't a normal childhood, and they struggled just to survive. This difficult childhood led Mark to a rebellious phase as a teenager, and he was eventually kicked out of high school for smoking weed. Then a German Shepherd puppy named Gunther came into his life.
Aw.
I know. The story has some dog action.
It's a doggy week, apparently. I have Gordon, there's Gunther, there's a lot happening with the dogs.
There's going to be another dog named Dingo. It's great.
Girl, oh my God. So many dogs.
So many dogs. The two bonded immediately, and Mark decided to train Gunther to become a search and rescue dog.
Fuck yeah.
Vicky said, quote, "That dog saved him," end quote. Mark realized he had a gift for training dogs and decided to turn his newfound passion into a career. And it was through his work that he met Linda Updike in 1991. Linda was the daughter of multimillionaire Wally Updike, the co-owner of the Chateau Ste. Michelle Winery and K2 Ski Corporation.
Oh, excuse me. Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cash. NBD.
Work. Go off.
She was looking to do some training with her dog and found Mark's info in the phone book. When the two met, Mark was immediately smitten with the tall blonde heiress, although it seems the feeling wasn't initially mutual.
Wah, wah.
Womp womp. Linda said Mark came off as, quote, very arrogant, end quote, and admitted that he rubbed her the wrong way at first.
Damn.
Yeah. She's not holding back. She's not pulling any punches here. But he was clearly gifted with dogs, so she decided to hire him. And through their professional relationship, the two bonded over their mutual love of dogs as well as the outdoors. Mark was an avid outdoorsman, hunter, and a gun collector with over 30 firearms. And Linda could shoot and fly cast just as well as him. Despite her initial feelings, Mark eventually won her over. After getting to know him, Linda described him as incredibly bright and very witty. He was a bit eccentric, sure, but also charismatic in many ways. So the two began dating, and 3 months into their relationship, they opened a dog training business on Kickett Island, a private island that was owned by Linda's parents at the time. The business flourished over the next 11 years, and by 2002, it was making $1 million a year.
Get it.
Yes. In addition to training services, the kennel offered massages, pedicures, I read.
For the dogs?
I don't know what that is beyond a nail trim. Like,
I mean, I think I've heard of people like putting paint on doggy nails.
that's true. And he seems to have worked with like all types of dogs, not just like typical, protection
rescue.
guard dog breeds. Yeah. So,
Girl, if someone's like, I will pay you money to put like nail polish on my dog's fucking toenails, I'm like, girl, let's go.
yeah, I've got the nail polish out.
Cash, check, Venmo.
It's happening.
Like, let's go. Let's do it.
Yes. So Obviously, this place is super bougie. They fed the dogs a raw meat diet and had weight loss programs, like everything. Mark became known as the dog whisperer of the Pacific Northwest, and over the years also built a name for himself as the, quote, dog trainer to the stars, end quote, with clients including Pearl Jam lead singer Eddie Vedder, Soundgarden's...
Get the fuck out of here.
Girl. Soundgarden's Chris Cornell, RIP, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, and Mariners outfielder Ichiro Suzuki. Just to name a few. Like, I found so many others. Yes. Then in 2002, after dating for 11 years, Linda and Mark finally decided to get married. The wedding took place in Las Vegas, and although Linda's father, Wally, welcomed his new son-in-law with open arms, Linda's mother, Nancy, had some reservations about the relationship.
Yeah, because he's not a fucking heir.
You'd think so. According to her, she said, quote, from the beginning, Mark showed an arrogance where he wanted to isolate Linda. All bad signs, end quote. And it seems that Nancy, unfortunately, knew what the fuck time it was.
Fuck.
Because, yep, after the two got married, Linda said the dark corners of Mark's personality began to emerge more frequently. The more the business began making money, the more obsessed he became with their spending and would rage at her over every little expense. For example, spending $5 on an avocado at the grocery store.
No. Girl, she's an heiress. Absolutely
right?
not.
Like,
no.
If I want an avocado, I'm buying an avocado. We make $1 million a year. Like, we can afford it.
This would so not go great for me because I'd be like, I'm sorry. Are you trying to tell me what to do? Yeah. Like, I can't buy. I was like, okay, well then I'm buying 15 avocados. Here the fuck you go.
I only eat avocado now, by the way.
This is why I would be murdered because I'm like, I'm not doing this.
You're like, I'm going to poke the bear because fuck you.
Yes. Yeah. Consider the bear poked. Absolutely not. Mm-mm.
Quote, that was too much money. Really upset him, end quote. And according to Linda, it seemed as though Mark was constantly in a rage. He was throwing tantrums all the time, every day, and became very difficult to live with. And apparently, Mark's anger wasn't solely directed at her. He became more aggressive with everyone, especially anyone he found on the property. A local named Danny Jensen, who was clamming on Kitkit Island one day, said Mark approached him and threatened him with a gun, telling him to get off his land or he would hurt him. And apparently, this was not an isolated incident. I couldn't find details on any more, but like they said similar interactions occurred.
Can I make a mini prediction?
Yes, do it.
Have amphetamines entered the chat?
Oh, not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay.
This does seem like...
yeah, because it's like he's cool, and then all of a sudden it's like, dude, what the fuck?
No, as far as I know, no, there was no mention of that ever.
That's fucked.
Yeah, which it's so crazy to me because they dated for 11
That's
years.
What I'm saying.
Like, so this is not like we got married right away and then, suddenly his personality changed. Like, you knew this man for 11 years and like none of this was happening at this level at the time. But like as soon as they tied the knot,
he
suddenly,
just literally just became like money and power hungry. Just like,
I have no idea. Mark's abuse and emotional instability escalated over the next 3 years. And in 2005, after 3 years of marriage and 14 years together, Linda finally decided that she'd had enough and told Mark she wanted a divorce. According to her, he went sheer white and his eyes went, quote, just crazy, end quote.
Also, what do you expect though?
Yeah.
Like if you're being a dick, you're like,
she was just going to put up with this? Yeah. Like she doesn't need you, bro.
Mm-mm. She's a fucking heiress. Hello.
Do you know who my parents are? Like I could leave at any time. I don't have to stand here for this. Shaking with rage, he apparently told her, you've got war. I'm not going to grant this to you. You've got a big fight on your hands.
Why would you want someone to stay in a marriage like that?
Yeah. So one of his sisters, I don't think I included this, but one of his sisters, I think because like he lost his dad and a sister, like the thought of like losing someone close to him just like was intolerable to him. But also, you're correct.
I 1000% get that. I get that. But then to have someone under duress.
Yes. And if you don't want them to leave, like, just don't do this and treat them nicely. And we're good. She would have stayed with you. Like, what?
Yeah.
You're the problem. Clearly.
Yeah.
Linda moved to Winthrop, Washington, 150 miles away on the other side of the Cascade Mountains, just to get away from him. She told him he could stay on her family's property and take control of the dog training business. She didn't even ask for a buyout. She just wanted to get away from him safely and for him to leave her alone. But Mark refused to let her go. She said he drove all over the state trying to find her and called her nonstop. Quote, I probably had 50 or 100 calls on any given day. He told me he would hunt me down and he was going to ruin my life. End quote. He left numerous threatening voicemails. In one, he said, quote, this is war. This is a goddamn war. You've wrecked my life enough. End quote.
In what way? Because it sounds like she helped you make a fucking business.
Yeah.
Where now you have Eddie Vedder's fucking personal number.
Yeah. And she left it to you. She just wants to leave. She just doesn't want to be with you
anymore. She's not even like going halvesies. She's like, just take it because I'm a fucking heiress and I don't need your goddamn money. I don't give a fuck.
I just want to leave. Like, I don't get what you're not getting about this. Another voicemail said, quote, you know I'm a guy that can hold a grudge until I am dead. And you know what? I can hurt you too. And I know how to do it. End quote.
Girl, you need therapy.
Yes.
Like Horde.
100% immediately. Call them right now. Stop calling Linda. Call a therapist.
Call a therapist. Yes.
Linda tried to lay low, but Mark was relentless in his pursuit. And eventually, he found her. She said, quote, all of a sudden, I look up on the hill and I see Mark Stover hunkered down with a hunting rifle pointed at me through the window, looking through his scope. End quote. Can you imagine?
No.
I would have a full panic attack, I think, in that moment. Like, I can't even imagine that, like, you're trying to get away from your husband who you want to divorce, and then you look up and he's looking at you through a rifle scope. This is a horror movie.
Literally.
Linda knew he was armed and dangerous, and in that moment, she was terrified that he would shoot her.
No shit.
But he just watched her. That night, as Linda was lying in bed, Mark walked into her bedroom with a gun in his hand.
Stop it.
Linda said he put the gun right next to her head on the pillow, got down on his knees, and begged her not to leave him.
Then why are we bringing the gun into the fucking
spoiler,
chat, Mark?
This is not how you get that result, by the way.
Flowers, chocolates,
yeah,
dinners. I'm sorry. Hunting rifles never entering the chat.
No. I think this was probably a handgun due to the size, but
don't give a fuck. Still,
awful.
No.
Terrible. None of the articles gave details about how this encounter ended, but it doesn't seem like Linda was physically assaulted or attacked, so most likely Mark eventually just left. Afterward, Linda called the local sheriff. Although her home security cameras showed Mark lurking outside her home at 2:30 a.m., and she had numerous threatening voicemails from him, apparently they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him for stalking.
No, because they
need to wait for something to happen, apparently.
Because they're like, well, has he raped and murdered you yet? If he raped you, I don't even care. Has he murdered you yet? Oh, then we can't do anything.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Whoops. Sorry. So Linda decided to take matters into her own hands. She started self-defense training with Chief Deputy Dave Rodriguez and amassed a small arsenal of more than 20 firearms that she made sure were always within arm's reach. She had one by her bedside, magnetized to the cabinet, and even one hidden behind a tapestry. She said she was prepared to shoot Mark if it came down to it. Quote, if it were he or me, it was not going to be me. End quote.
Go off. Yes.
Mark continued to leave her threatening voicemails and appeared to start surveilling her bedroom. According to Linda, he called her one day and told her details about a romantic encounter she'd shared with his former best man, who she'd had a fling with after she and Mark had already split up. Yes.
I'm going to ask a question that's really dumb. So restraining order, she's not A restraining order doesn't do dick, incidentally.
Yes.
They can just be like arrested after the fact and all that shit. But there's no force field preventing them from coming to
Yeah,
your
it's
fucking
a piece of
house.
paper. Yes.
But she's not going this route. She's not going restraining order, even though homeboy's literally watching her.
It mentions later that she has one, but
Okay.
it doesn't seem like she had one at this point.
And I get that you're like, you don't want to escalate it to.
Yeah, I don't really know. She should have gotten one, if not. Yes.
And again, I say that knowing full well that there's like very little a fucking restraining order can actually do.
Correct. Linda said the details he gave about the encounter were accurate and that, quote, it was horrifying, end quote. In 2007, after 2 years of angry legal battles, Mark finally agreed to grant Linda a divorce. But according to Linda, he remained hostile and was oddly obsessed with their wedding photos, demanding that Linda give them back. In another voicemail, Mark said, quote, "You got your goddamn divorce, but I better not ever find out that you're in possession of those wedding pictures," end quote. Linda claimed she didn't have them. On Mark's 56th birthday, he left yet another voicemail saying, quote, yep, the voicemails just keep coming.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, quote, "My world's falling apart. This may be my last birthday. I don't know what I'm about anymore, but I'm about to give up," end quote. When Linda played the message for the police, Sheriff Frank Rogers said they feared this was, quote, "a man that's ready to check out and take somebody with him," end quote.
Oof.
However, despite their fears, they again still apparently didn't have the evidence they needed to arrest Mark for stalking. But shortly after, Linda's neighbor, Ruthie Hagmeister, saw a man taking trash out of Linda's trash cans. When she confronted him, he said his name was John and that he had permission to take the trash. But Ruthie knew he was lying and that the man was Linda's ex-husband, Mark Stover. So she immediately called Linda, who called the sheriff's office. Authorities were able to locate the vehicle Ruthie had described, and when they pulled it over, Mark was behind the wheel and the trash was found in his possession. So they were finally able to arrest him. Mark Stover was officially charged with stalking in 2008, 3 years after Linda left him. But he agreed to a plea deal, which required him to serve a year's probation and surrender all of his firearms. So he's just back on the streets. Although there were no more reported stalking incidents after his arrest, Linda said she still feared for her life, despite having a protection order against him.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't know if it came after the arrest. It seems to, but it's unclear.
Yeah.
So she continued to look for ways to protect herself, which eventually led her to a weapons expert named Michael Oakes, who also specialized in hand-to-hand combat. Linda originally hired him to conduct a security analysis of her home, but the two grew close and eventually fell in love. Although on the surface, it might have seemed like an unlikely romance. Linda was almost 6 feet tall. Michael was 5'6". She didn't have any children, while he was a single father of 4 after his first wife had left him. But Linda described Michael as sincere, genuine, caring, and loving, and said that he was somebody she'd been waiting for her whole life.
Oh.
I know. And Michael's kids adored him, with his oldest daughter, Amanda, describing him as, quote, "a super mom, stay-at-home dad," end quote, and saying she was thankful to have him in her life. Michael was protective by nature. According to his second wife, Jennifer, Michael saw himself as a protector of his children, of his family, and of all the people who couldn't defend themselves in the world. Linda finally felt safe with him by her side. Mark Stover's friends and family said that by the summer of 2009, Mark had finally put the anger and hurt of his divorce from Linda behind him. He relocated his business from Kickett Island to his new home in Anna Cortez and even had a girlfriend who he wanted to marry, Teresa Vo Michael. But according to Michael Oakes, Mark wasn't over it at all.
Obviously.
Yes, he just had a new target, Michael. Michael said one day while he was in a Costco parking lot, Mark appeared out of nowhere and threatened him. Mark told him that he knew who he was and that he knew Michael was in a relationship with Linda, and that there was something of his that she wouldn't give back, and that Michael was going to get it for him. Because apparently,
He's still hung up on these fucking pictures?
yes, is still hung up on these goddamn wedding photos and demanded that Michael deliver them to him. According to Michael, Mark then told him that if he didn't get them, Michael's children would pay the price, and went on to describe what his daughters were wearing that morning. Michael was convinced that Mark had been following them the whole time and that his family was now in danger.
But like, get a fucking life. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Like, you got a new girlfriend, you have a successful business, like, just chill. You don't need to be doing this, right? That's just me.
I mean, and I get that it's a thing of like, how dare you leave me? I'm going to destroy your life, until you're like, oh my God, I loved you the whole time, which that's just not how that works. But like,
Yeah,
get a fucking life, get a therapist. What the fuck?
correct. Thank you. Michael described Mark as a very frightening and intimidating man, and that he was constantly threatening towards him. He said that Mark's obsession with the wedding photos went on, and that he demanded secret meetings with Michael, including 2 at a church in Anacortes. However, Michael apparently didn't tell Linda any of this, presumably so as not to worry her. Then on August 3rd, 2009, the Skagit County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous phone call regarding an upcoming drug deal. The caller told police it would be happening in the morning, and that the last name of the man transporting the drugs was Stover. The caller was whispering on the phone, and when the police asked why, he said, quote, "This is very dangerous. Carries a gun. I wish you guys would do something before he kills somebody," end quote. Mark Stover was pulled over the following day, and when police searched his vehicle, they found a small metallic box on the undercarriage containing a couple marijuana cigarettes and some very low-grade cocaine. Mark claimed he had no knowledge of how the box had gotten there, and told police it had been planted on his vehicle by someone else in an attempt to frame him. Since the drugs were found on the outside of his vehicle, Mark was not arrested at the time, pending further investigation. But he was so alarmed that he immediately hired private investigator Lee Heron to look into it.
If this is going where I think it's going, I'm going to flip over this fucking table.
Oh my God, where do you think it's going?
That he did this to himself and is trying to implicate other people? That he planted the drugs on himself?
Oh, that's an interesting theory. Okay. Put a pin in that. We'll revisit this.
Yeah. I don't trust this fucker.
Facts. This story is wild. And it's very he said, she said. So I feel like it's, even after doing all this research, I feel like I don't even really know the truth a little bit.
Okay.
So we'll see. I'll let you.
So we psychic sistered very
we
hard.
really did. Yeah.
On that front.
No, when you said that, I was like, relatable. Correct. So yeah, you can tell me what you think. Mark told Heron that he suspected that Linda Updike and or her father were out to get him, and that he wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to have him killed.
Oh, so now it's this. Now we're turning it around that I'm the poor victim?
Yes.
After he's been threatening her for fucking years? Okay. So, I'm sorry. All this is bullshit to me. Sorry.
Crawl. Okay. Just wait. We're going to get into it. It's all sus.
Okay.
It's all sus.
Okay.
Investigators never found any evidence that either Linda or her father were involved in the drug plant or that they were plotting his murder. But Mark was convinced that it had something to do with Linda. His girlfriend Teresa said he was very fearful and that he told her, quote, "She will not rest until I'm dead," end quote. Although Mark no longer had his guns for protection since he'd had to surrender them as part of his plea deal, he did at least have a trained guard dog, a female Belgian Malinois named Dingo, who, according to Mark's private investigator, was utterly devoted to Mark and, quote, "would have done anything she could possibly do to protect her master," end quote. On Wednesday, October 28th, 2009, Amber Baker, one of Mark's employees, was the first to arrive at the kennel in Anacortes that morning. When she got there, she immediately noticed that all the dogs were riled up and barking uncontrollably. As she walked up to Mark's house, she saw blood in the driveway, but assumed Dingo had attacked a wild animal again. She went to the back door of the house, but when she tried to open it, it was locked. which was odd because she said it was never locked because Mark had Dingo for protection and wasn't worried about anyone breaking in. Amber thought about knocking on the door, but she had a bad feeling and decided to just leave instead. Another employee, Stephanie Poore, arrived shortly after Amber left. She noticed Mark's white station wagon backed up to the door and saw who she thought was Mark going in and out of the house and putting stuff in the back of the car. Since the man was wearing Mark's hat and jacket, she assumed it was him, although she admitted she was too far away to see the man's face clearly. She said the man got in the car and flew down the driveway, barely stopping when he got to the street and just taking off down the road. A few minutes later, she went up to the house to use the bathroom, but as soon as she opened the door, she was hit with the overwhelming smell of bleach. And when she looked down, she saw 3 splotches of blood. She immediately knew that something was very wrong and said there was a feeling in the house that, quote, I can only describe as evil, end quote. She got out of there as fast as she could. Amber called Mark's cell phone repeatedly that day trying to get a hold of him, but he never answered or called her back. By the next day, there was still no sign of Mark, and no one had heard from him. Then, as Stephanie was walking up the driveway, she saw Dingo sitting at the back door, growling, and knew something was wrong. The dog appeared to be injured, so they immediately brought her to the vet. When they heard the news, they were absolutely shocked. Apparently, Dingo had taken 3 bullets in the face.
Holy fuck!
But was miraculously still alive. We don't deserve dogs. I love them so much. No.
Jaws on the floor.
Girl, it's insane. Knowing Dingo had been shot, the smell of bleach and the blood in the house suddenly presented a sinister possibility that Mark had been killed. The police were notified and began searching the house for clues. They found blood on the walls and carpet, but no sign of Mark. However, authorities were now convinced that Mark Stover had been murdered and began the search for his body. They checked the lakes nearby and even lowered a mini sub to scour the seafloor, but again found nothing. However, the previous day, a woman named Tammy Gilden and her mom had reported trespassing when they saw 2 vehicles parked illegally at a nearby Grange Hall. One of the 2 vehicles they'd reported was a white station wagon. Tammy told the operator that she saw a man moving a large object wrapped in plastic from the station wagon into a black SUV, and that her first thought had been, oh, a body. Which, relatable, I feel like both of us would have that exact thought as 100%.
Well. Mm-hmm. Yep, one of us. Yep.
Tammy gave the 911 operator the SUV's license plate number, and minutes later, the black SUV was located. Police pulled the vehicle over for trespassing and discovered that the driver was Michael Oakes. The officer said he seemed extremely nervous and that he was wearing sunglasses at the time, which was odd since it was raining. The officer then noticed a bundle in the back covered with thick blankets, but apparently had no reason to check it.
I know there's like specific laws about,
yes,
like if you stop someone for like a traffic light or whatever the fuck, and then there's like weird shit. It's like it needs to be a little bit more overt.
Yes.
Like there's like a crack pipe in the, in the cup holder than like just like a mound of stuff.
Yes.
It's not probable cause to search.
Also, from what I can tell from the timeline, this seems to be the day of, and they did not find Dingo until the following day. So it seems like this is kind of prior to them assuming that he had been murdered. Again, because one of his employees also thought she saw him that morning.
Right.
So they weren't immediately like, oh,
like
he's
looking for him.
Missing. Like they were like, okay, he just like went out for an errand and he's not answering our calls. Okay. So the officer gave Michael a warning and let him go. Afterwards, Michael went to visit his ex-wife, Jennifer. Jennifer said he looked very disheveled and frumpy, which was very unusual for him. When she asked him if he was okay, he told her, no, I think I'm in trouble. Then, according to her, he said, quote, if law enforcement had seen what was in his car, he'd go away for life, end quote.
Yikes.
Yikes. Yep. Jennifer said that he then implied that whatever he'd done, he'd been hired to do it. Quote, that it was a job gone bad, end quote. She apparently didn't know how seriously to take this, though, and really she was just worried about him because he seemed so upset. So she didn't really do any more digging or report this to anybody, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Michael then told her he had to leave, and she kissed him goodbye on the cheek. Michael drove off and made the 160-mile trip back to Linda's house. He arrived just after 11:30 p.m. The plastic bundle was gone, and Linda was waiting for him. He told her he was having the worst day of his life, but according to Linda, they didn't discuss it any further. The next day, Linda received an email from a former employee of Mark's. It read, quote, "Mark is missing, blood in house, dingo almost dead," end quote. When Linda heard Mark was missing, she said her first thought was that maybe this was it and that he was coming to kill her. Shortly after, there was a knock at the door. It was Chief Deputy Dave Rodriguez and Sergeant Gene Davis, who told her they were investigating the disappearance of Mark Stover and that they were there to talk to Michael Oakes. According to Rodriguez, Linda seemed surprised that they were there. They began to question Michael about his whereabouts on Wednesday, October 28th, and asked him if he'd been in Anacortes. He admitted that he had, but claimed he'd just been visiting his ex-wife. But according to the police, he started getting pretty agitated and looking around. He told them he needed to find his medication and walked out to his SUV. Davis saw Michael open the back hatch, reach inside, and take out a plastic bag, then throw it over an embankment, which,
Girl.
bro, what are you thinking? Literally in front of the cops?
Chill.
Yes.
It's like, do you want me to take that again? Did you see me do that? Or should I?
What? Like, don't do like the most suspicious thing you can do in front of the police, please.
People are also really fucking dumb. That's like,
yeah.
There's been a pattern of the last few documentary series that I've watched of there being like gotcha moments or like, no one knows this. And it's like, so you're telling it to the documentary crew that's been following you around?
Jim crazy.
Girl. So many things. And I'm like, what? You understand they're not your, they're there. That's a camera. You understand that's what this is?
Yes. Like,
I cannot.
No. Again, thank God people do this and they're not smart about crimes, because that's more terrifying.
100%.
So obviously the police went and recovered the bag because they literally just watched him throw it. And when they found a .22 caliber pistol inside, they immediately arrested him on suspicion of murder. But detectives couldn't help but wonder if maybe this was a murder for hire situation, and they wanted to question Linda regarding her involvement. Although she briefly spoke to the police the night Michael was arrested, she refused to answer any more questions after that, on the advice of her attorney. Michael claimed he didn't set out on the morning of October 28th to murder Mark, that Mark demanded that he come to his home in Anacortes that day to deliver the wedding photos. Again, he's hung up on these fucking wedding photos.
You can't like FedEx these?
She claims she doesn't have them. So he's just like, I need the fucking wedding photos. And she's like, I don't have them. And he's like, but I need them. And it's like, does no one have these? Like, your family doesn't have any of these?
Call up the photographer.
Come on. Also, it's not a big deal. You don't need them anymore. You're divorced. Like, let it go.
Yeah, you're not married.
Yeah. Michael said he felt like he had no choice and had to go or risk endangering his family. Although Michael didn't have the photos, he went anyway, hoping he could reason with Mark and convince him the photos no longer existed. But just in case, he said he went prepared for the worst. Believing Mark was dangerous, Michael wore a Kevlar vest and brought a gun with him. And he claimed that he wore a Kevlar vest to every meeting with Mark because
he's unhinged.
Yes. And understandably so. Like, if Linda told him all this information, I'd be like, I don't trust this guy. According to Michael, Mark caught him by surprise and immediately shot him in the chest, but that the vest protected him. Michael said he then grabbed Mark's gun and shot Mark in self-defense with it. The next thing he knew, he was outside and face-to-face with Mark's guard dog, Dingo. When the dog attacked, he shot it. Michael said he panicked afterwards, realizing Mark was dead, but instead of calling the police, he put on Mark's hat and coat and loaded the body into the back of the station wagon and drove off. He said, quote, "It was the worst moment of my life. I wanted him to be alive still. I would never harm anybody for any reason except to defend my family, myself," end quote. When asked why he didn't call the police if it was self-defense, Michael said, quote, "With my knowledge of law enforcement, nothing added up with Mark Stover. I don't know if it's because he was so tight with local law enforcement. I don't know what it was. From that first meeting with him, I did not feel like calling the police would do anything but kill my kids," end quote. Which, like, sounds crazy, but like I kind of also get it. Like, how many times did Linda call the fucking police to be like, he's stalking me, he showed up in my bedroom with a gun, and they're like, well, nothing happened though, so like,
yeah, but like, did you die?
But did you die? Yeah.
No.
So I think it's insane not to call the police if it's supposedly self-defense, but like I can kind of see the reasoning here. However, authorities weren't convinced of Michael's version of events. They had discovered that he'd made a few purchases from a Walmart near Mark's house around 5 a.m. that morning and had surveillance video of him at the store. He bought a backpack, some weights, some rope, camo pants, and a camo shirt.
Girl.
Which, yeah, admittedly doesn't look great.
You're like, hi, where's the murder aisle? I just need to find these things.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And all in one place.
Cool. I'm going to pay cash, by the way. Don't worry about it.
Don't, that receipt, girl, I don't need this. I'm not writing this shit off.
Yeah, thank you. Which investigators obviously found suspicious. But according to Michael, the supplies were just in case Mark sent out his attack dog. He said his plan was to flee to a nearby water tower, attach a weight to the end of the rope, throw the rope up onto the ladder, and pull himself up.
I'm sorry, is this Rambo? What the fuck are we
doing
here?
Basically, yes. I mean, granted, this is what this man does for a living.
Right. Yes. Because I was like, girl, and then I was like, oh no, that's the
No, he's a security expert. Like, he's an expert in hand-to-hand combat. Like, this is a guy who knows what the fuck's up here. But Michael continued to insist that he had acted in self-defense and that there was no premeditation involved in Mark's death. When police asked where Mark Stover's body was, Michael told them he dropped it in the water off a dilapidated dock that was located a mile from Mark's house. But authorities had searched that exact spot just days after Stover disappeared and never found the body. Michael Oakes was eventually released on bail, but he and Linda were forbidden to see each other or communicate by a court order. Linda believed that he was innocent and said, quote, "Michael would never murder anybody," end quote. His daughters were also convinced of his innocence, with his oldest daughter, Amanda, saying, quote, "We are 100% sure he is not a murderer," end quote. Mark's family, however, unsurprisingly, didn't believe it had been an act of self-defense. They were convinced that Linda was involved and had asked Michael to kill Mark for her. They also believed that Linda had been baiting Mark during the time when he'd been stalking her, pointing out that she'd started a romantic relationship with his best man, which was bound to drive him insane. Mark's sister Vicky said, quote, "This idea that Linda was fearful of her life and scared and didn't want to go outside and all of this because of my brother, I don't believe a word of it," end quote. Which, he was arrested for stalking. He was stalking her, though.
I was like, then how did that happen?
Yes. And like, they kind of imply that she, like
set him up in a way.
No, it's just kind of like exaggerating certain things. Like, a lot of the story is like he said, she said. Like, all of the stalking stuff is coming from Linda, which granted there are voicemails, obviously, and he did have her trash. Like, so some of this has to be true, but like.
And look, it is not unusual for family members to defend their piece of shit sibling, even when they know they're a piece of shit.
Of course.
I don't believe his family. Sorry.
I'm kind of with you on this.
All of these voicemails, he like was stalking her. You don't just get arrested. You don't just get booked on stalking for nothing.
Yes. And like, she had security cameras around her house. He was seen lurking around her house in like the early hours of the morning. Like, the evidence is there. Even if she is embellishing some of it, making it seem worse than it is, like,
he's still showing up unwanted.
The foundation's still there, though. Like, yeah. Private investigator Lee Heron said, quote, "Mark Stover was a wonderful guy, beloved by his clients, by his friends, by his family," end quote. and claims he is not at all the monster described by Linda. Nearly 1 year to the day after Mark Stover was killed, Michael Oakes' trial began. He maintained that he had acted in self-defense and said the bullet hole in his Kevlar vest proved that Mark had shot him. But prosecutors argued that it was possible that he shot his own vest, since the bullet appeared to have been fired at close range and had gone in almost perfectly straight, exactly in the middle of the bulletproof vest. Which, little obligatory devil advocate, Mark was an avid hunter, and I'm assuming probably a pretty good shot.
Yeah, good shot.
So if you're aiming to kill somebody and you're shooting at their chest, like, that makes sense.
It's also like a big target.
Yeah.
To hit.
Yes.
You know? And like that's like when you go to like a shooting range and they have the little like papers of like the guys, like
that's where the target is. Yeah.
Where you're aiming at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the prosecution argued that Mark no longer had any guns as part of his plea deal. However, the defense team said they had a witness that would prove otherwise. According to a former employee of Mark's, Megan Mataya, Mark invited her on a hunting trip just 2 months before his death and asked her to carry his gun. She also claimed that Mark had told her that he saw Linda and Michael in the Costco at Kennewick. Unfortunately for the defense, the judge ruled that because there was no way to verify that Megan's story was true, she was not allowed to testify during the trial. Linda did testify, but reiterated that she had no liability in the case and had never asked Michael to kill her ex-husband. The prosecution accused her of giving Michael details of Mark's life, what hat he wore during the day, what car he drove, etc. But Michael denied that this was the case and confirmed Linda was not involved. He insisted it had been about him, his children, and Mark Stover. Quote, "He started a gunfight and I won," end quote. Jennifer Thompson testified that the anonymous 911 call to police regarding Stover's drug deal was the voice of her ex-husband, Michael Oakes, though. And the prosecution argued that Michael had actually planted the drugs on Mark.
Oh.
Yeah. But he denied that he did. When they asked Michael about Jennifer's testimony that he had told her a job had gone bad when he'd visited that day, he said Jennifer just misconstrued what he said. Quote, "I believe my exact words were, 'I had a meeting, something went dreadfully wrong, and I will be blamed for it,'" end quote. He continued to insist it was just self-defense and that he'd only hidden the body because he hadn't intended to kill Mark and had panicked in the moment. After 4 long days of examining the evidence, the jurors voted, and their verdict was unanimous. Michael Oakes was found guilty of premeditated murder and received the maximum sentence of 26 years in prison with no chance of parole. Michael apologized to Mark Stover's family as well as his own, saying he, quote, "made a series of very poor decisions that led me to a compromising situation. I wish to express the sincere and heartfelt remorse I carry," end quote. Michael's children were devastated at the verdict. His son, Andrew, went to live with his grandparents, while his daughters, Amanda and April, stayed with Linda. She and the children still believe Michael acted in self-defense. Linda Updike was never charged in relation to the crime and continues to deny any knowledge or involvement in Mark's death. Mark's sister, Vicky, has posted a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of accomplices in her brother's murder. She said, quote, "The anguish of not having a body to bury. It haunts me," end quote.
Yeah.
Because Mark's body was never found.
Damn.
And because of this, Detective Dan Lerva says the investigation still remains open. Michael Oakes appealed his conviction in 2015, but it was denied. He is set to be released in 2035. And that is the story of the murder of Mark Stover. And I don't know how I feel about it.
Damn.
Thoughts? Do you think it was self-defense?
No.
I'm kind of with you on that.
No. The Walmart footage, no.
Yeah.
I think he was really dumb.
Yeah, it's just the not calling the cops for me. Like, I understand people panic, but bro,
Yeah.
if it's just self-defense, you gotta call the cops.
And if he said like he just figured he'd get away with it,
Yeah.
girl. And if you're going to Walmart at that time, if you're at Walmart at that time and you're not buying like cheese puffs,
Yeah.
no. Mm-mm. And you're buying everything from the murder aisle,
Yeah.
no, girl.
You're decked out in camo.
You don't
Yeah.
need to have camo to have like if this guy's like, I'm going to kill you, why are you wearing camo?
Correct.
We're not in war. No.
Facts.
Yeah, no. That's the most suspicious part for me is the camo.
Yes. I don't really have an opinion on Linda being involved. I can totally see how she wouldn't be. It
Sure
doesn't seem like Michael ever shared what was happening with her and that she was kind of just like in the dark. And according to Michael's ex-wife, you know, he felt like he had to like protect the underdog and like kind of like rid this world of bad people.
Yeah. Like, you don't have to ask me, I got you.
Yes. Of like, okay, this was a problem for her. We thought it was over. And now it's becoming a problem for me. But again, like all of this stuff is according to other people.
Right.
So like,
right.
Did he really threaten his kids and tell him what his kids were wearing? Like, I don't know.
I mean, he could have.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, all of this is possible. But again, there's a lot of it is just like he
Right.
said, she said.
Speculative
We're
or
not,
like, yeah.
yes.
Hearsay, yeah.
It's like we're going based on their version of events, which like we
Right.
don't really have evidence that it's true.
Right. To support. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's crazy. If you want to find out more, there is a 48 Hours podcast, Train to Kill, about this. It's like a 6-part series.
Oh, shit. Okay. Where do they land on it?
I did not listen to this because this was
Okay.
this would have been 4 hours, but
Yeah,
I read a bunch of
100%.
articles that kind of like reviewed it. And it's one of those things like it's still like very much just like up in the air.
Right. Where are you on it?
I don't feel like it was self-defense.
Yeah. I think the shittier thing, if it wasn't self-defense, then just be like, I'll give you the body and take a plea for less time. At least, give these people, a body to bury or like, whatever.
Yeah. It did blow my mind though, because there are so many times that because there's no body, people get away with it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's actually most of the time when there's no body. So the
Yeah.
fact that they didn't have a body and he still got convicted is a little crazy to me.
100%. Yeah. They're much less likely to prosecute if they don't have a body.
Yes.
Because then you can pull a Robert Durst of like, I don't know that they're dead.
Yes.
How do you know they're dead? Yeah.
Yes. And even like, I kept thinking of your story last week. Like they had a body and very clearly she was murdered and they still didn't get a conviction.
Yep.
Fucking crazy.
Girl.
But I mean, I could see it being like he kind of thought he was just like doing like the Dexter thing kind of and getting rid of somebody who was
it's like, would anyone really miss this asshole?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, it's fucking wild.
Damn.
And again, like it's all just like he said, she said. So it's you have to just like take everyone at their word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people who are already like sus and questionable at their word. Yeah.
Yes. And it's also one of those things of like, he says that Linda never mentioned this to him, like wanting to get rid of him, but like it's something you could easily like say casually in passing and not be like, I want you to kill my husband, my ex-husband.
Yeah,
you could just be like, I just wish he was gone. Like, I wish I didn't have to deal with this anymore. Like, it's so stressful. And then he's like,
yeah,
babe, I got you. Don't even worry about it.
Right.
So I don't know. That's pretty crazy. But hopefully the trauma was light on this one.
It was, yes. We had hero dogs, which we love.
Dogs. Dingo, which honestly, love that name for a dog. Great name.
Yeah.
And yeah, she survived the fucking 3 gunshot wounds to her head.
Amazing.
Dogs are amazing. We don't deserve them.
Yes. And you're amazing. I love you, my birthday queen. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you for my birthday story. That was mind-bending and fascinating, and I'm never going to get over it.
No, how could you? What the fuck?
It's insane. Yes. I love you so much.
I love you.
You're just so beautiful and wonderful, and I adore you so much.
Oh my gosh, stop. You're beautiful and wonderful, and I adore you so much. And we adore you. This is another fucking horror podcast. I'm Monique Sanchez.
And I'm Amy Traden.
You can find me on the gram at PinUpGirlMo.
You can find me at Lobotomy, and that's Lobot.Amy.
Also, you should go on our website, anotherfuckinghorrorpodcast.com. There you can find our new sexy ass merch, and we will be announcing some situations very soon. So check that out. Keep yourself abreast to that. Guys, you're rad as fuck. We're obsessed with you. Keep being awesome. And as always, keep it cute.
Keep it creepy.
Bye.
Bye.